first of all, fantastic that you chose such a small topic and drilled down into it: life, women, and art. Small topic, and then going into the stages of all three. So
it was challenging.
Why not pick a small topic? But just really, from a technical standpoint, there was one credit I saw at the end for photography. Now, does that mean you were shooting this film as well, or was that for still photography?
No, I had never shot a film before in my entire life. I had always been a gun for hire and had a professional crew. But in London, when I wanted to make this film, I didn't have any money, and I had taught film at universities, and I thought, well, if they could do it, I could do it. So I just, I just picked up a camera. But to be honest with you, the good stuff, I mean, I did all the personal stuff, all the stuff talking to the artists, but the bigger stuff was all done by a professional cameraman who worked for years for the BBC, and I had hired him to work with me on the film on Atlantic Records for Susan Lacey's American Masters. And he had shot a lot of stuff for the Ahmet Ertegun film. And he was living in London. He had a new camera. And the new camera was a Z1, which is a Sony small camera. And he hadn't used it anywhere. And he said, I'll do it for very little money, or nothing, actually. But I've never used the camera before, so let's see how it goes. And that's how. And after that, he did all the big shots, and he used another camera. He bought a bigger camera. He bought a small, proper HD camera. So he did all the shots that required some skills that are way beyond my ability to photograph.
Well, I think it was beautifully photographed, obviously.
Thank you.
That was
That's
fantastic.
a great
And I saw that
compliment.
you also got some footage for some of the artworks, the Tempesta and a couple of Sunset, you got from other films that had been made about those works of art?
Well, I basically didn't get any other I got a teeny bit of mainly everything. I got some stills that were made by people who were working for galleries and stuff,
Right.
but no, in
Okay,
fact, there was.
so that's
I
what
think-
that was.
No, it was all shot by either David Chilton or myself.
Just
except
jumping
for-
to Tempesta, that was the reveal of Tempesta, going from the cutting of the marble to the her working on it, and then when it was being installed, just the little fragments of the piece being shown, and just building a little bit of suspense, and then the reveal was really a beautiful piece.
Thank
of
you.
many beautiful pieces in here. Another
Thank
thing
you.
I wanted to talk about technically was the way that it's edited together, because if you have that topic of women, life, and art, and you have the stages of all three, and you have 10 artists, so the chapter separations were very well thought out, I thought, and beautifully done. And then within each chapter, and at the end, at the beginning and at the end, the way that it was edited and woven together, the storytelling aspect of that, and to make the piece what it is, I think that was brilliant. And was that all on you? Is that you working with the editor? How does that work out?
Well, I'm afraid it was all me, because I did
Well,
hire
don't
an
be
editor
afraid.
at the end, but I want to thank, there's several people in the audience. When the film wasn't finished yet, before it was shown at the Royal Academy, I came to New York because I didn't have any filmmaker friends in London, and I really needed feedback because it didn't have the chapters and it didn't have that. And I showed it to like 25 of my friends at Mirror Banks and Richard Brockman's apartment building, where they have a screening. And I said, guys, you've got to help me. And afterward, we all sat down and everyone gave me their feedback. And really, as a result of that, I just digested it all and came back to London. And I had 6 weeks, and I said, well, now I've got to make a film. I've got all this stuff. What do I do? But I had started out as a film editor. Film editing is where I make my films. So, you know, in a way, it just brought me back home, because I had shot 160 hours of film. And the reduction... Yes. So the reductionists, you know, talk about, you know, a reductive process. I mean, they talk about, like, Helene starts with how many tons of marble. Well, I started with, you know, a ridiculous amount of footage and a very clear idea. You know, I reread recently my first treatment that nobody would support me on for this film, in which I divided into chapters. I didn't have the cleverness of the chapters, but I had the idea of youth, middle age, and mature, you know, people like myself, over 60. And I had this idea of the sociology, the psychology, and art all being one. And then this copy line that I wrote is the negotiation between life and art that is important. And I couldn't make it work. And then finally, at the last 6 weeks after getting the feedback, I hope that's what came across. But that was the challenge for 3.5 years.
Well, I believe you met it beautifully.
Thank you.
And you know, everybody's always trying to, or a lot of people are trying to delve into what is the creative process, whatever the nature of art is, whether it's in terms of writing, filmmaking, visual arts, dance, music, all of these things. And we get at what's it about and how does the process happen and what's the inspiration. And this biographical insight of this very personal, talking about process, and getting at it from that point of view, and not a philosophical point of view, but just a really down-to-earth, hands-on aspect of what's involved at the different levels of life and at the different levels of sociology. And it's not only just the stages of life, but it's generational, because it's not all people from the same generation as they go through life. It's people at that stage of life in different generations and different times, and certainly from different social and cultural backgrounds. So that was all part of the fascination for it. But the things that's jumped out at me, the things to do with ritual and repetition in all of their work, and how does that come about, and the overarching idea of mirrors and windows, and you know, turning it around, and look, and the different quotes that were used. And the idea that if people get it, I think it was Alice that said this, if people get it, that's nice. But in your life, you have to be doing what you wanted to be doing.
I'll tell you something that's so interesting that you said, because that line and the line from young Jody at the beginning, she says, you've got to have self-belief, because if you don't, no one else will. Those two lines are what sustain me. And at the end of the film, I showed it to Alice, and she said, you've got to take out the line about you get up in the morning and you want to do something. And if it works, great. If people get it, but people get it, it's a gift, because it's what you're doing in life that counts. And I said, you want to take it out. It's the most important line in the entire film. And she was really angry at me for not taking it out. And I said, I'm sorry.
No.
I can't take it out.
Well,
it's the essence of what, in a way, this is all about.
I believe it is. It jumped out at me, and I've been looking into this.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that. You have no idea. I've never had anyone else who picked up on the nuances that I picked up on. I'm grateful. I mean,
No, but
goodness.
as I say, a lot of people look into this and try and figure out what is it that makes the creative process work. And the idea, Maya Angelou's idea, that you don't run out of creativity, the more you use it, the more you have. But that particular quote, if people get it, it's nice. But if you but you have to like what you're doing. You have to be doing what you want to do, you know, at the end of the day. And that so summoned for me a quote that I've been using a lot in different things, different commentaries, which is, it's from T.S. Eliot, it's from the Four Quartets. And at the end of talking about what's the point of trying to use words to describe anything, because we're never going to succeed. And at the end of it, he says two lines that I believe are very much in line with this. He says, for us, it is only the work. The work's the only thing. The rest is not our business. And that's exactly the point, I think, and it's just beautifully made in this. And I do want to give other people a chance to talk, although I could talk all day about this movie. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
So let's have.
It took me 10 months to cast the film. And I remember years ago, a documentary filmmaker I worked for said casting, I think it was Al Maisels, he said to me, casting is 90% of the film. And I kept on thinking about that. So I started with about 250 artists whose work I looked at on the internet. If I fell in love with their work, and I didn't know anyone, I just had moved to London and I didn't know a soul. So if I fell in love with their work, I would go and meet them in their studio. And then I had to have chemistry. It was like a dating process. I had to have this rapport that would work between, because I didn't want to make it just about art. And so that's how it happened. And then I had to make sure that they were all working in different mediums, they were all different ages and had different nationalities. And it was a very long, complicated process, but thank you very much.
So did you have the idea first to make this film and the chapter idea and everything else before you had any idea which artists you'd be working with?
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That is fascinating. Oh, and I just wanted to say one other thing before we go to the next question. A technical thing again. The use of multiple screens was really, really, really brilliant. I think.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. Because in different, it was used sparingly, but it used, I thought, really effectively, and I just really liked that. You're right here.
I love this. I haven't seen anything like this, and I just think you had so much integrity. My words mean nothing, but I'm just so curious. How did you decide just to deal with women?
Well, I'm a woman, and I mean, quite honestly, I had worked commercially in films, making films for television for 30-some-odd years. I had made films on very powerful men. I tried to make films on some women for various, but I never succeeded. But I thought, well, no one wants to hire me in London. I just moved there. I sort of like, Paul Simon once said, you know, when you're down and out, you have nothing to lose. So I thought, well, I'll just do what I feel like doing, just like them. And so I decided I would make a film about all the women I knew, all the creative women, some in this audience, some all over the world that I knew, and who I thought were just fantastic. And it would be a collective biography of all of us. And so it didn't occur to me, I wasn't making a feminist film, I was making a personal film. And that's how they all ended up being women, because that's who I know and that's who I understand. But more importantly, to be honest with you, when people ask me, women will talk about things more directly and emotionally than men in general. I'd love to make the same film about men and prove myself wrong, but that is the reason I did it, because of that.
Well, I think it's beyond great, and I think it's very timely, and I can't think of a better thing that anyone could do, and I just wish you'd go with this and do more of it.
Well,
because
thank
you're mining gold.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't even get a distributor, so, you know, what can I say? That's very kind, but thank you.
There is a topic that is addressed a lot of times about women in the arts, and especially painters, and how that works and doesn't work. But the honesty that the women had about motherhood and children, and about wanting to have children or not having children, all that kind of honesty that, I don't know, I'm a man, but I don't expect to get that from men, really. Or to
No.
see that point, or see that side of the picture. So, remarkable stuff. I can't really see to the back, so I
A
don't know
lot
if
of men
anybody up
have,
there wants a picture.
men in the audience have often responded and saying they related to it just as well as women. They said anybody who's understood a writer, a musician, or even people in other things, because your creativity spans the globe. It isn't just fine art. You know, it could be a scientist. Your language is different. Your material that you're different. But the leap of faith and this notion of going into having a hypothesis and sort of trying to find your way through it and come out with something that seems to resemble something that makes sense, I think that's kind of the essence of what creativity is about. And then it doesn't necessarily work, so then you go on and you do it again, or you do another one. And that's kind of, I think that's all you can do.
No, I think that's
I
universal.
may be wrong, but
No,
I think that's about it.
I think that's 100% universal, and
Yeah.
that's why it spoke to me about all those other art
Thank you.
forms
Thank you.
that are in there, and the other things that were said too about the self-doubt and the self-belief, because nobody else is going to tell you, and you don't have to know. And at the end, can't remember her name, but she's talking about, no, I've never really achieved what I want to.
Maliha.
Yeah, and has anybody ever finished? I mean, you can finish a story, and you look at it years later, and you say, I wish I could have rewritten that because it's lousy. I like the idea of pretend writing also, by the way. I do that, but I use real words.
Penny. Take what?
Why did you want to take the line out?
I've never understood it. I can't imagine. I really don't know. Do you know? I have no idea. Although Helene Blumenfeld did say, I showed this at the Freud Museum in London, because I'm also a psychologist, and I showed at the Freud Museum, and I talked about the parallel process of art and psychology. And Helene was on the talking with myself and a psychoanalyst about this, and I mentioned the same story. And after it, I said to Helene, I said, why do you think that she went? She said, it was so private. And it hadn't quite occurred to me, and maybe that was the reason. It was a very private thought, and that she didn't want to reveal that about herself.
I've always found that the obsession to invent, which is what art really is.
Absolutely.
The people that do it best have the hardest time explaining what it is. As if it can never be explained, which is very frustrating.
Yeah.
Which is why, for us, there's only the work, and the rest isn't our business. You know, talking about it may not be our business. I'm not sure. We have run out of time, but I know that Susan will be in the lobby later on, and she will have, which is heaven sent for all of us, she will have copies of the DVD. So if anybody wants to get this, to share it, to disseminate it, spread it, or just keep
Christmas
it home
presents.
keep it at home for their own viewing pleasure, by all means, check out the DVD, which Susan has in the lobby, and be sure to go this way, and be sure to mark all your ballots with the number 5, I think, is appropriate.
Thank
and,
you.
out this way.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.